All right, welcome back to another episode of PT Meal Podcast, a buffet of play, therapies, movement, exercises, activities, and leisure, all packed in a hearty conversation of physical therapy profession and practice. I am Johan De La Paz, your host again. Welcome to the show. So, in today's episode, we are going to talk about side hustles and side gigs for physical therapists, clinicians, professors. And to help us with that topic is F. Scott Feil. It's just strange to say that the letter first.
I know. We can go into that story a little bit. I don't mind telling that story.
Welcome to the show, Scott.
Yeah, Johan, thanks so much for having me. So my name is Dr. F. Scott Feil. The F doesn't stand for anything. I grew up on Long Island, New York, and my dad was an English teacher for 32 years, so he named me after F. Scott Fitzgerald. But his first name was Francis. My dad didn't want to name me that, so he just left it as the letter F, which is great. It's cool till you turn 16. Then, like I said, everything, all your legal documents get screwed up because it's all first name, middle initial. So thanks for that, Pop. Appreciate you, looking down, laughing on me right now. But I'm happy to be here, man. I love the podcast. I've been listening to a couple episodes now, and I really like what you're doing. I think you're spreading a good message. So I'm just super pumped to be here tonight and kind of talk about some different things that healthcare clinicians and academicians can get into on top of their 9 to 5, and the reason behind a lot of that as well. So it's one of those things that kind of happened to me by accident. I fell into a lot of these things accidentally. So I'm excited to kind of tell the story about a lot of them.
Sure, and I'm excited to hear that too. But before we really dig into it, could you give us a little background on, what you do as a physical therapist, and then probably lead on to how you started in that side hustle, side gig area?
Yeah, sure. So I graduated from East Carolina in about 2006, I think it was. It was a master's program back then. And then they offered the third-year transitional doctorate if you stuck around. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. That sounds like the way the field's going. And I started it there at ECU, but then my dad got sick, had some health problems. He ended up passing away before I could finish my capstone project. And then the window of opportunity kind of closed on me there. And so it took me a handful of times to pass my board exam. And while I was studying for it, I was living at home with my mom and trying to help her out after losing my dad. And, I just wasn't even sure that I wanted to go into physical therapy anymore. I kept failing the damn test, the NPTE exam. I worked at the hospital as a PT tech, and I had to go past the room where he passed away every day to clock in and clock out. And that was really starting to wear on me. It was a bummer of a situation. So as soon as I passed the test, I just had to travel and find myself. So I started out as a traveling physical therapist. I was out in the middle of nowhere, Texas at a SNF. Then I went to Honolulu, Hawaii for 6 months doing home health. That was really cool. And then I ended up in Asheville, North Carolina for 3 months doing home health as well. After that, I kind of settled down in Charlotte, worked at an outpatient setting for a couple of years, then down to Savannah, where I did outpatient for about a year, then Atlanta, where I did workman's comp for a year or two. And then from Atlanta, they had an opening in Waco, which was closer to where my wife's family was from in Texas. They lived in Katy, Texas at the time. So I ended up transferring to Waco and working at the workman's comp company for about 3 or 4 more years before I finally finished my EDD in 2018. And I didn't think I was going to teach originally. I just thought I would leave it till, a retirement age. I just figured, it's a nice fallback. If my hands give out or my back gives out and I can't do physical therapy anymore, I could teach, right? Well, then I moved into a skilled nursing facility and home health situation where I was working almost full time on both of them. It's about 60 hours a week. And, it was basically just to get ready for my student loans. They were coming due after I graduated in 2018. And so I was like, all right, I got to figure this situation out. But then, COVID hit and, we had about 35 patients that had it and about 32 staff members that had it. And my wife's a type 1 diabetic, so she's already immunocompromised. So I kind of stepped away from the clinical side of things for a moment. And that same week that I stepped down, the head of the program at University of St. Augustine in Austin called me up and said, hey, are you still interested in teaching? And I said, well, I wasn't. But now that you mention it, COVID's kind of running rampant. I think it might be a good time to look into teaching. So I transitioned into academia full time with the EDD, and I turned out, I knew I liked teaching, but I didn't know I liked it as much as I do. So I teach full time for the University of St. Augustine's Flex program, which is like teaching from home 90% of the time and then going up for labs every other weekend. And then I still have my mobile PT practice, which is a cash pay out of network practice. But when we relocated from Waco to Wimberley, it was 100,000 was the population up in Waco, and Wimberley's population is 4,000. So it's kind of a big adjustment. I don't know how heavy I'm going to lean into the mobile practice, just because it's money's decent, but it's not as good as some of my other side gigs and side hustles where I really want to lean into full time or as much time as I can. On top of my teaching gig, because, with my wife being a type 1 diabetic, we need medical benefits, and not just any medical benefits. We need good medical benefits. Right. And luckily the university has that. So that, my 9 to 5, if you will, teaching full time at the university gives me those medical benefits. And then all my side gigs kind of help fill in the holes and the gaps in my business where I can kind of grow and scale them as much as I can. To really even out where I feel kind of most fulfilled, and it's pretty lucrative as well. So it's a nice little side hustle, side gig situation.
Right. I listened to one of your podcasts, and I guess you mentioned there that you have 8 side gigs.
Yeah, pretty much at any given time. I'm usually running about 6 to 8 side hustles under 3 different businesses. So it's kind of more services that I offer as side gigs or side hustles that have turned into like mini businesses. But they're all very separate. They're all very different and distinct, and they kind of fall into 3 pillars. So, the first pillar would be Epic Therapy and Wellness, right? Which is, my mobile practice. Okay. The second one is pteducator.com, which is my online business. I sell a lot of courses through there, whether it be fantasy football injury courses or esports injury prevention courses, or how to start your own mobile therapy practice. Or my big one is the master class on how to pay down your student loans quicker through using these side hustles and side gigs, right? And then the third and final one is FGI Consulting. And that's basically where it's almost like a hodgepodge of things that I do as far as injury prevention and wellness, right? I consult on that. I've done that for a lot of local companies. I go in and I teach them how to, properly lift, use body mechanics, team lifting, stay hydrated, get good sleep, eat right, all those things that we need to do to stay healthy in the workplace, and so that we don't get hurt and we cut down on workman's comp costs, right? So I consult that way. Plus, I've also consulted on a lot of small business people that are kind of coming up and getting stuck and having questions that are doing businesses similar to what I'm doing. I've helped consult that way. And then I also have helped consult with things like population health, and just kind of treating further up the chain, if you will, and trying to help educate and show people, again, how to get a healthy population, whether it be a workforce or a community or a team of people, just trying to show them health and wellness and how they can, avoid turning into diabetics or, somebody with hypertension or something like that. I'm certified in the APHPT, which is Mike Eisenhardt's group, and that's all about population health and just trying to treat further up the chain so that we can prevent things from happening as opposed to treating them after the fact. Okay. But so those are the 3 main businesses. I also, with the consulting, I do a lot of stuff with like lead generation and, Google ads and Facebook ads for businesses as well. And a lot of times I'll just go in and either help set up a company's ad flow or, set up their ad campaign. And a lot of that wasn't even healthcare. A lot of that was outside of healthcare. Right. I've worked with companies that were like pool builders. I've worked with roofing companies. I've worked with home renos, just random companies that I got pretty decent at, coming up with ad campaigns for. I started obviously doing it for my own business. When I was a mobile therapy practice, I had to figure out how to generate new leads. So I started, researching Facebook ads, and I took a course or 2 on that. And that really helped me learn how to do it. And then 2 of the guys from my PT class that I graduated with asked, "Hey, I saw what you were doing with Facebook ads. Could you do that for our clinic? I got 2 or 3 clinics here that I need to run ads. I've never done it." I said, "Yeah, sure." They said, "We'll pay you." And I said, all right, sounds like another consulting gig. Line it up, you know. But like I said, these consulting gigs just kind of fell into my lap. It wasn't something I set out to do, and then I just filtered them all into the FGI consulting gigs. So
these are all amazing, because when we're talking about all the three pillars of your businesses, these are things that physical therapists can do, and not just like stay in the clinic, because usually, like us Filipino physical therapists, our mindsets are always, all right, I'm a physical therapist, I'm going to work in the clinics, or I'm going to work in school as a professor or something. But not many people would think about these other options as a form of business.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue there is the mindset, right? You've got to think about outside the box. You can't just think about being a 9 to 5 clock in, clock out therapist, right? And a lot of these side hustles and side gigs can still keep one foot in the boat of healthcare and physical therapy. Like I said, let's just take one example. Let's take the lead generation for a PT clinic, right? Let's say you wanted to learn, and you didn't have the skill set yet, but you wanted to learn about, running Facebook ads to get new patients in the door for a physical therapy clinic, right? That's still sort of physical therapy related, right? It's a skill set you may have to learn outside of your graduate school, but luckily a lot of the graduate school stuff we learn teaches us systems and how to, write standard operating procedures, right, for plans of care and that. But now we're just switching it to business and writing out systems for how to do this for a business, step. And then you go from there and you say, okay, I've learned this new skill. I can then implement it in healthcare for a physical therapy clinic, or outside of healthcare if I wanted to, like I said, work with a roofing company or something like that. So you can keep one foot in the boat of physical therapy or healthcare, but you just need to think outside the box and think about how can you use the skills that you've learned throughout grad school and apply it to what other businesses or what other people in the community need, right? You're connecting point A to point B. There's a need or a question that needs to be answered, and B is you have the answer, right? So if you can connect A to B, you've got a pretty profitable business. Again, it's just about thinking a little bit outside the box.
How do you get started in side hustles and side gigs? Because I think a lot of people would want to know what would be a good motivation to start a side gig or a side hustle.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it came down to the fact that, okay, look, I have $140,000 worth of student loan debt, right? And I have two doctoral degrees, right? I've got a doctorate in physical therapy and a doctorate in education. And it wasn't fair to my family to take on that student loan debt, right? I felt a little bit guilty about it because I didn't even want to teach, right? I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this EDD. I don't really want to teach, but as it turned out, it was a good fallback plan to have, right? But with that $140,000 worth of student loan debt, my thought process was, all right, let's just suck it up. Let's take it on. Let's say, okay, this is my responsibility. I took out those loans. I'm going to pay them down as quick as I can, right? Well, how can I do that? There's really only two ways to amass some form of money, right? And that's either to cut corners and budget and save as much as you can on the lower end, or make more income. Those are the only two ways to generate some form of money, right? So for me, I thought it was way easier to generate more money and more profit, right? And just come up with ways to increase your income, right? So I said, okay, well, what are some things I could do that could increase my income, right? Okay. And the first thought was, all right, PRN, right? I'll work a PRN job. But that you're still trading time for money at that point, right? And so, okay, maybe I'm making $50 an hour. That's not bad for PRN, but why do $50 an hour if I can treat a cash pay patient out of network home, my mobile business where I just bring a table into their home or their office, treat them there for 45 minutes, and I can charge $200 for the hour. Right. So why am I going to work $50 an hour for PRN for somebody else, making somebody else rich, when I can just, treat my own patients under my company, my PLLC, and make $200 an hour, and that's, again, not having to deal with insurance companies, not having to deal with reimbursement. It's straight up cash, homie, So it's like, it just didn't make sense to me. Right. So if I was going to trade time for money, it was going to be my own time on my terms for the amount that I felt that I was worth and where I was valued. Right. But like I said, now the problem becomes, okay, let's say that you have this mobile practice like I had, right? And you make approximately $200 an hour per patient, right? And that's a pretty good rate for a physical therapist. But let's say I can go to a moving company locally here that has 50 employees, and I can consult with them and teach them how to properly lift, proper body mechanics, group lifting, team lifting, right? Bending in the knees, tightening the core, all the stuff that we learned in PT school and ergonomics, right? And I can teach them about health and, healthy eating, staying hydrated, like all these things that need to happen in order to be in a happy, healthy workforce. And I can charge $1,500 an hour for that consulting. And I can do that for 2 hours, right? 30 minutes for like tour of the place, evals, see what's kind of going on there, right? And then about an hour and a half worth of educating on how to do all these things and teaching their employees how not to get hurt on the job, right?
Right.
And boom, right? You're going to make, $2,000 to $3,000 for consulting that way. So now it becomes a matter of, okay, again, if I'm going to use my time, why would I treat two patients, let's say, for 2 hours and make $400 when I can consult and educate 50 people and make $2,000 to $3,000 in those 2 hours? Right. So now, again, you're trying to find the value of your time, and you're trying to figure out what your services are actually worth.
Well, when you're explaining that, I was thinking of some colleagues I had in the university that, specializes in ergonomics. They can go into that in their like free time after school or something or weekends. They can consult if use their knowledge in ergonomics. They have like masters in occupational health as well. So that's something that they can do.
Absolutely. I mean, it didn't take much. I have 2 templates. I have one that's for like sitting at a desk and typing, like overuse injuries, like carpal tunnel and stuff like that. And then I have another template that's for like big, heavy lifting, like, moving companies or, anything where there's, heavy lifting involved. I had a furniture company in Waco there that I worked with. So I just use those 2 templates and I customize them to that company specifically. I put in some examples of exactly what they're doing and things they're lifting and how to really do it. And again, I took days off from work to go do these consulting gigs. I would do 2 consulting gigs, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, while taking a PTO day off from work because the money was too good to miss. Right. So, I mean, I'm working a full 9 to 5. And I would just take a day off every once in a while and go do these consulting gigs. Or I would do them, after 5 o'clock or on the weekends if they can do it then as well.
Right.
But again, right, I'm working 40 hours a week at that job. And then I'm probably using another 10 to 15 a week to do consulting and to do some other things. So it's not easy. I'm not saying that it's easy, right? But luckily now, working for the university, my hours are down to about 32 for the university, and they give me 8 to do self-development type stuff, which could be clinical work. So again, that would be perfect. I could take a full day and go treat patients if I wanted to on my mobile practice, right? Or I can work on my business coaching and my consulting side of things as well. And that's kind of where I put a lot of my efforts in my free time.
So the next question there now is if you're someone who has a full-time job and you're thinking about starting even one side gig, how much time should you allot in just the planning and starting part, and not the execution yet, but the thinking part of the side gig?
Yeah, it doesn't take much time at all. Honestly, you could be up and running within 30 days. No problem. In the state of Texas here where I live, they recommend a PLLC, right? Which is a professional license liability corporation. It's similar to an LLC, right? The reason for that is anybody who has a professional license, doctors, lawyers, dentists, PTs, OT, speech, whatever, anyone who has a professional license and wants to open their own clinical practice, they are offered the PLLC. Nobody else in Texas is offered that. And it's just another layer of protection, right? So if somebody goes to sue you, they can only sue the business and can't go after your personal stuff, right?
Right.
Good news is PTs very rarely get sued because we just don't do anything malicious for the most part. We don't kill patients, so, our malpractice insurance is pretty low and we have a good heart, right? We have a servant's type heart. We want to help people. We want to see them get better. So for the most part, PTs are not getting sued that often, right? But just in case, you've got to have that PLLC in place, I should say. And then you also need some sort of malpractice insurance, right? Go ahead.
Is that required to whatever side gig you're going to open up, or if it's just physical therapy related?
Yeah, I would say if it's clinical, if it's physical therapy, occupational therapy, or speech, whatever, if it's clinically related, you're going to want some sort of malpractice insurance. Now, let's say you have an online website, right? And you sell courses through that, like I do through pteducator.com. Most of the time, you're okay if you just put a disclaimer. And again, you'll have to talk to a business lawyer about setting this up. But if you put a disclaimer at the bottom of your website saying this is for purely educational purposes, it's hard for them to come back and sue you for something, they found in your course and tried and it didn't work out, right? So, again, as long as you have some disclaimers in there, that kind of takes care of that. But luckily, my malpractice insurance covered not only Epic Therapy and Wellness, but also pteducator.com. I told them everything I was trying to do with my businesses, and they covered it all. And it was only like $300 a year, something like that. So it wasn't very expensive. Yeah. So the LLC, again, same thing, about $300, $350 to start a PLLC here in Texas. It's different for every state. So you have to do a little research depending on where you live. The malpractice insurance was about $300 for the year. And other than that, I think there was maybe just a yearly tax if you made less than $1 million. I think you had to just say, yeah, I made less than $1 million. It was $50 or something like that for the first year. And that was about it for startups. I think I paid another $500 or so to set up my website. And then after that, it's all just been implementation. So for, pretty much for close to about $1,000 or less, you could really, get your first business up and running. And again, if you're bootstrapping and you're just starting, like I didn't have $1,000, right? So what I did was I went on eBay and I sold a bunch of stuff. We had a garage sale. And I think I ended up on Facebook Marketplace as well, selling a couple of pretty big items. And I think we ended up selling about $1,100 worth of stuff in one weekend. And I took that $1,100 and I just put it toward the business. And, that was it. It was go time from there. And like I said, takes about 3 weeks or so to get your articles of incorporation for your PLLC. Once you do that, you have to get an EIN, an employee ID number. And that is basically like a social security number for your business. And then once you do that, you're ready to roll. You open up a business bank account with that EIN number. And that's it, man. It's go time. Yeah, it's really not that hard.
Well, you explaining it sounds easy, but it's for someone who's not really familiar with the business terms, that's really a handful.
And that's why you reach out for mentorship, right? You find people who have done the things that you want to do. That's what I did. I paid for many mentors. Every time I hit a speed bump or a road bump or something I didn't know about, I'd pay for a master class or a mastermind, right? Or I'd pay for somebody to consult with and to just help me and mentor me through the process. And it basically speeds up your timeline. With mentorship, there's basically 3 reasons people pay for mentorship. 1, they have no idea what they're doing and just need guidance, right? They need somebody to show them what the hell's going on. 2, kind of what you're doing, but you've seen them already do it and you just want to take their process and implement your stuff into their process because you like the way they're doing it. Or 3, again, you pretty much know what you're doing. They've already done it and you want to speed up the timeline, speed up the process. So, by avoiding all the mistakes that they've already made and them showing you how to speed through this process, you can go from a 12-month process down to a 3-month process. It's a no-brainer, right? I'm going to pay for that every time, So, there's an argument, why would you pay for mentorship? Well, I'm telling you why. That's why I did it. I either hit a speed bump or didn't know what was going on, or I just wanted to speed the process up and show me the way.
Yeah. Right. There are people who would want to experience the mistakes. There are people who would want to skip those mistakes.
And you're still going to make mistakes, even if you have a mentor, because your experience is going to be way different than theirs. But they're going to show you the things that they did to say, hey, avoid these big red flags. So there's definitely mistakes to be made, but that's good, right? Failure is just a learning process. That's all it is. It's an experience and it's a chance to learn. The only way to really fail is to stop and to quit. and to stop doing what you're doing, stop trying to follow your dream. That's the only real failure,
Right. Having a side gigs or side hustles sounds like a fairy tale, but what are the realities of having a side hustle or side gig?
Yeah, I mean, I still work, 60 hours a week or so. It's not easy. Again, I pretty much have my full-time gig, right? Teaching. And then I still work another, 20 to 25 hours a week on the side hustles. But it's also because I love them. They're my passion projects, right? They're my zones of genius, if you will. It's what I would love to do all day, every day for free if I could, But, I got bills to pay. I got to, put a roof over the head. I need the medical benefits, right? So it's a little bit of those golden handcuffs, right? So I have to work the full-time job, but, I also stay fulfilled and happy and enjoying what I do when I do the side hustles and the side gigs.
Right.
So, I'm not saying it's easy by any means. It takes work. It's hard, especially if you want to start it as a side gig and eventually turn it into your full-time gig and walk away from your 9 to 5. That'd be great, right? If people can do that, awesome.
Be your own boss.
Right. And that's the goal eventually, right? I don't know that I'll ever hit that point just because of the medical benefits, but I'm pretty happy right now. I'm content doing what I'm doing at the ratio that I'm doing it. So I wish I could say that it's an easy job, but it's not. It's a lot of work. So it's not just like, oh, you just make a course and then you put it online and you make all this money and it's easy peasy, right? It's literally mailbox checks. No passive income doesn't exist. I'm not a fan of the word, but there are ways to make money while you sleep, right? Like for instance, my courses sell sometimes while I'm asleep, right? And that's cool. But there was a lot of front end setup on those courses, and then there's ads you have to run to it, right? And there's work that still goes into an online business. People think it's easy. You just set up a course and sell it and you make all these millions of dollars. It doesn't work that way. There's still a lot of work that needs to be put into an online business, but it can be done. And believe me, I'm easily the dumbest smart guy you'll ever meet. So if I can do it, trust me, anybody can do it. It just takes persistency and just stick-to-itiveness, I call it, right? You just have to keep getting back up after you get knocked down. And it's going to happen. You're going to get knocked down a bunch, right? That's the only way I got through my EDD, right? They dragged me across the finish line kicking and screaming. But I had a high grit score and I just kept getting up every time I got knocked down. And that's what entrepreneurship is, right? That's what being a business owner is. It's just figuring that stuff out and getting back up when you get knocked down.
Great. Right. There are words that stuck to me when you were saying earlier. You said passion projects. People might ask, like, should my side gig be a passion gig or should be for profit gig?
Well, you can find the crossroads of both. That's the winner chicken dinner right there, right? So the way that I usually start people off is by asking, okay, what do people come to you for? What do they ask you questions about because they know you're so knowledgeable about this and you just love it, you're passionate about it? What do family and friends constantly come and ask you about, right? What are you just so good at? Then I ask them to write a bunch of things down that they love to do, hobbies or just things that make them happy, right? Then I kind of see, are there any that intersect? Are there any that cross over? So for instance, let's just take an example here. People are always coming to you about shoulder issues because you just love the shoulder. You love the anatomy of it. You're a big fan of overhead sports and things. And, you're a shoulder expert. You love the shoulder. You would treat shoulder all day, every day if you could, right? Well, it turns out you also like golf. You like fishing, right? You like bowling. You like, playing cards, board games with the family, right? You like going out to watch sporting events. Like, okay, well, now you got a list of hobbies and things you like to do. And now you look and, shoulder is an expertise and here's golf as well. You like golf. Well, that's kind of an overhead sport. That's a swing sport, right? Maybe I could do something where I start a physical therapy practice. Maybe you start mobile, start small. and I treat golfers only. That's my niche. That's where I've niched down, and I just treat golfers. And now you're bringing together both worlds, because at the end of the day, you want something you can do long term and stick with it, and you want something that'll make you happy and keep you fulfilled. Because if you can do those things, you can try and error this thing for a while until you get it working right, and you'll just inevitably be happy. Right. You're your own boss at that point for that side hustle or side gig, right? It's with a population that you enjoy, and it's with, for the most part, a couple of, a joint that you enjoy and a part of the body you enjoy. It's going to be a lot of low back pain with golfers as well, right? They may have knees or ankles too, but you can start putting out content about the shoulder constantly, like golfer shoulder, tips, tricks, stretches, strengtheners, whatever. And you start putting out, a YouTube channel and content on that. Right. And then you start putting it out on Instagram and Twitter. Then you start a podcast about it. Right. You can monetize YouTube, right? After you get 1,000 followers and 4,000 watched hours, you can monetize YouTube. Right. Podcast, you can get sponsors for that, whether they be golf related sponsors or healthcare related sponsors. You can find a podcast. You can even do a local podcast, right? Let's say I live in, Waco, Texas, where I used to live, right? It can be the Waco Golfers podcast. And all I talk about is health and improving your game for golfers in the Waco area. Now I have the local Waco pharmacy sponsor the podcast, and I'm making $500 a month off of their sponsorship. And all I have to do is read a 30-second clip every week on the podcast, like a commercial. Right. So now there's just 3 or 4 different streams of revenue coming in to all these little connected side gigs and side hustles that I've started, and those little streams start adding up. 500 a month here, 1,000 a month there, 200 here, 800 there. And all of a sudden you're making 3,000 or 4,000 a month extra just from this little golfing side gig that you started locally. It doesn't have to be huge. Like I said, you could keep it as a side gig like I'm doing. I've got 3 businesses, all of which are side gigs, and they're not $1 million companies by any means, but you add them up all together and I'm making more than I would as a physical therapist or as a professor. So it's just a matter of finding what works for you and what you can do long term and what you like to do. And if you don't like it or you don't want to do it, outsource it, right? Hire somebody to do it. Pay somebody to bring them onto your company, a virtual assistant, or just a team member. For me, I hired my wife this year for the first time. She's my bookkeeper now, right? And she's helping out with a little bit of social media. So that was my first hire, right? And we get to write her salary off as a tax benefit too. So it's a win-win.
Wow, everything you said just came out easy for you. I was like, how long did you have to study all of that? And how much time did you invest to, get familiarized with all of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this all started with the Healthcare Education Transformation podcast, right? It's a podcast I host with Brandon Pone and Stephanie Wyrock. And basically, we all had issues with the world of academia. And when we came through the programs, we kind of felt like we weren't given 100%. Like it just wasn't a great, perfect program. And no program is going to be perfect. But we felt there were issues in our own programs that we felt could have been better. So we were new to academia. We didn't know anything about it. We weren't teachers yet. I had only taught 2 adjunct courses, right? And so we had to figure out how to get experts on the show and ask them what they thought was broken about academia and how they would fix it. So that's the big question we ask at the end of every episode, right? If you could fix, if there's one aspect of higher education, whether it be physical therapy or otherwise, that you could change, what aspect would you change and how would you change it? And the number one most given answer was cost. They felt the cost of PT school and healthcare schools were just too expensive these days, right? Which I agree with, right? The debt to income ratio, especially for physical therapists, is kind of crummy right now. You can't come out with $200,000 worth of student loan debt and make $65,000 as a new grad. You just can't do it. It's not sustainable. So I said, all right, if that's the number one issue we're coming across, I got to find a way to answer this issue. I have to, my call to action has to be to do something to help attack those, the cost of physical therapy school, right? And so the way I thought to do that was to, I was working and doing and experimenting on all these side hustles and side gigs for about 3 or 4 years. So I said, why don't I show people the things that I'm doing and they can pick and choose from ones they think they might like, and we'll start there. So I wrote the book, right? PT Educator Student Debt Eliminator, and you can find that on Amazon. It came out naturally because I was an English major before I was ever a physical therapist, right? So I just wrote the book. It took me, I don't know, 8 or 9 months. I probably could have got it done in 3, but life kind of threw us a couple curves. So I released the book. Then I created a masterclass on the back end of that. And then I finally finished a list of 100 different side hustles and side gigs that people can do as healthcare providers or healthcare academicians. And you can find that at pteducator.com/100. People can download that list. They can look at it. I think of the 100, I've tried about 20 of them. Of the 20, I'm still doing about 8 to 10,
Oh, wow.
And so again, it just took me getting my feet on the ground, my boots on the ground, and just trying this stuff, getting down in the trenches and figuring it out. And whenever, finding things that I personally needed to grow and scale my business, like lead generation, Facebook ads, Google ads, that's not something they teach us in PT school.
Right.
But I had to figure it out, right? So I tried. I took some online courses, watched some online videos, and it just wasn't clicking. So I went to a master class, paid a good chunk of money. But at the same time, I ran a couple Facebook ads after that weekend, and I got 3 or 4 plans of care right off the bat off of those Facebook ads. And plans of care are averaging, $1,500 to $1,800 per plan of care completed. So 3 of those covered the course cost, right? And now everything after that's just ROI, right? I'm just making money on my investment. So again, a little bit of it is mindset. You've got to have that mindset that like, look, this is an investment in myself and my business. And, money is just a tool that we use to transfer energy and to make transactions. Right. And so I need to use this money to invest and make a transaction to learn more and better myself and get better at this process so that I can implement it in my business and then make more money. So then I can put it back into the business and grow and scale the business and make more profit.
Yeah.
So,
channeling your profits to the business, all about the business.
Exactly. Now, that's not to say not to pay yourself, right? It doesn't all go back into the business. You got to make some money off the top. And there's a good book out there called Profit First by, I believe it's Mike Michalowicz. And that's a good book to read for business owners who are, just not sure how to handle their finances. This is a good way to kind of learn how to like pay yourself first, then put tax money aside, then the rest of it goes back into the business. And that's kind of a reverse thought. Everybody usually pays all the business bills and expenses first, then taxes, then whatever's left they take. But he says to switch it around and take, profit first. So it's a pretty cool book.
That's interesting. Because I've heard some podcasts that, channel your profits to the business first. Like, forget about paying yourself for a while. Just invest all your profits to the business before paying yourself. So that's different.
Yeah. I mean, early on, that's probably true. You need a little money to get off the ground, right? But once you get going and you have a certain number that you've hit monthly and you're keeping that and you're expanding on that, that's when you've got to start, paying yourself first, a salary,
right?
And then, kind of going from there. But again, there's also ways to pay yourself through bonuses, quarterly bonuses, to where you're not getting taxed on it as much. But again, I'm not a CPA. I'm not an accountant. These are things that you've got to talk to your CPA about, your small business accountant, and then your lawyer, your business lawyer as well. Because you want to do everything on the level for sure. But there are some really interesting tax loops out there. And that's one of the bonuses of starting your own business or your side hustle is there's so many tax write-offs. If I need a new laptop for the business, I purchase it, right? And then at the end of the year, it comes off as a tax write-off. So my salary comes down by whatever the cost of the laptop was. Right. So inevitably, what's going to end up happening is if I write off enough, it's going to drop me down a tax bracket. And I'm not going to get taxed at 22%. I'll get taxed at 15, or whatever your tax bracket is. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. Again, just one of the perks of owning a small business. There's tax write-offs.
So getting back to mindset, you mentioned earlier, for people who wanted to start a side hustle, a side gig, is it better for them to plan, like intensively plan, comprehensively plan, versus fake it till you make it? Try everything on the list and, just go for it. And if it fails, then try again.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, right? There has to, so let's say you start with the list of 100 side gigs and you go through them and you pick about 5 or 10, right? Again, you don't need that many. You just need 1 or 2, really. Like, let's say you have a monthly income goal that you want to set for this new side gig or side hustle. You can hit that goal likely with just 1 or 2 side hustles, right? And it depends on how much it is. But even still, like when I was doing my mobile practice, right, I was making an extra, it was probably about $1,500 to $2,000 a week just seeing patients, you know, and that's only, you know, 5 to 10 patients a week. That's not much. That's, you know, and then that would end up being, you know, anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 a month extra. That's huge. That's a salary for some people, right?
Right.
And again, I wasn't hustling for that. I was, you know, just getting by. I was just seeing a couple patients here and there, like two a day after work, or like one or two in the weekend, whatever, you know. And eventually it just grew to where I was just too busy, and I had to like kind of cut the ads off and just stop and say, hey, this is what my patient load, and that's it. Otherwise I'd be working 2 40-hour a week jobs, and that's not the point of this. You know, the point is to gain time freedom through financial freedom, right? You want to be able to pick and choose who you see, when you see, you know, on your terms. And in order to do that, you've got to either, you know, work on the business instead of in it, right? Or you got to start hiring people on to see some of the patients for you, if that's what you're doing. Or like I said, hire somebody to work on your online stuff, whether it be social media or bookkeeping or whatever, to kind of free yourself up to do CEO level stuff and start thinking about the business, right? So, I mean, if you look at the big picture, there has to be some level of planning where you narrow it down to the handful of things you think you might be good at or might be interested in. And if you don't have that skill set yet, it's not the end of the world. Everything is available on YouTube University. I mean, it's all out there, you know? And if you still can't get it, or you want to feel a little more comfortable, you want one-on-one attention, hire somebody who's doing that exact thing you're trying to do. Copywriting. I had to read 8 to 10 books before I understood copywriting, and I was an English major. Right? So I thought I'd be good at it, right? No, copywriting is a totally different language. The grammar sucks. There's like, you know, exclamation points all over the place, and like, emojis. Emojis and bold letters and, you know, huge headlines. I was like, what the hell is going on here, right? But it took me a while to figure it out. And it, again, about 3 months, I read about 10 books, and then I got the hang of it. I was like, all right, I feel comfortable writing my own email sequences and my own Facebook ads, you know, and my own Google ads and stuff to kind of, you know, drum up my business the way that it should be done through copywriting. Then once I got good at it in my business, I was able to now offer my services to other PT clinics. And I just recently wrote an email sequence for a company that was coming out of COVID. So they were basically, you know, opening their doors back up. They were trying to send out a reintroduction type sequence to their patient list to say, hey guys, we're back. We're still trying to be cautious, you know, wearing masks, still social distancing, but we offer telehealth still, but we're now offering in-person visits. So it was a 7 email sequence, and those 7 emails, I think it ended up being $750 I got paid. And it took me about an hour to write those 7 emails. So that was a pretty solid hour, right? But if I didn't put in the time and I didn't learn about copywriting, I never would have been able to do that, right? And I had to feel comfortable enough with it for myself before I went out and offered my services to other people. So again, if you plan on the 4 or 5 side hustles or side gigs you think you might be interested in or might be good at or might excel at, there's your first start. And then you try them. And if they don't work or you don't like them, cross them off the list and either do another one, add another one, or just do the 2 or 3 you ended up liking. You know, so I think it's a little bit of a combination, right? And I think a lot of people struggle with imposter syndrome. Oh, I can't do that, or I can't start a business, or whatever. That's true. Yeah. Again, if I can do it, trust me, anyone can do it, right? You just got to put in the time. You got to put in the reps. You got to try some things and fail. You will fail sometimes, and that's okay. That's a learning process. It just takes time to then learn enough to not make those mistakes again and get better at it, right? You put in the reps, just like anything. You didn't know how to be a physical therapist before you went to PT school. Now you know, right? So, I mean, again, throw that imposter syndrome out the window. Stop making excuses. Just do it. Literally, like Nike says, right? Just do it. Just implement, you know? Because again, like improper action beats proper inaction 100% of the time, right? Meaning that, look, If I try stuff and it's okay, it's 75, 80%, that's great. That's good enough, right? Now
better than zero.
Exactly. It's a million times better than zero, right? Now make it a little better. Craft it, work on it, tweak it a little better. 2 to 3% better every month. And all of a sudden at the end of the year, you're 90%, 100%, 110%. You know, so I mean, you got to just implement. Pick something, try it, start it, implement it. You know, and then the rest just becomes you know, part of the journey. And you have to really enjoy that grind and that hustle a little bit, you know, to get to a comfortable point in the journey to where you're like, yeah, this is working finally. I knew I could do this. You know?
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. All I could think about is when you were talking and explaining things, like all that you did for your business, you became good, and then you leveraged that skill that you learned to earn and help other businesses.
Yep.
Wow.
You just hit the nail on the head. The number one key word is leverage. And I'll tell you a story that happened to me. I was in the 3rd year out of 4 in my EDD program. And I loved the didactic work, all the class work, the coursework. I was doing great in it. I loved it. But I had this like panic attack moment where I was like, shoot, I don't want to teach. What the hell am I doing? Adding another $40,000 onto my student loans for a degree that I don't even want to use, right? So luckily, I talked to a bunch of the people in the PT world that were mentors of mine, right? I talked to Greg Todd, Jerry Durham, and Paul Goff, and even a couple of people outside the realm. Gallant Dill was one of my mentors, you know, and just some business folks. And they basically all said the same kind of thing in the different ways. But basically, they all said, as long as you can leverage your skill set, your license, and your degrees, doesn't matter what you do, you'll be fine. And that kind of set me at ease. And I was like, oh man, they're right. Like, I don't have to teach in a university. I can teach online classes about business or about, you know, side hustles like I do, right? Or about sports, fantasy football injuries, right? Or esports injuries or whatever. As long as I say, hey, look, I'm an expert and an authority in this topic because of my credentials, my background, my schooling, and then the extra work that I put in to learn about this topic and my passion for it. People will flock to you and pay you for your knowledge and your skill set, you know, and you know, it just becomes a matter of people knowing you, liking you, and trusting you to eventually then purchase from you. So that's where the content creation stuff kind of comes out, and you got to put yourself out there and, you know, not be afraid and just put yourself, you know, facing forward. And it just becomes a matter of leveraging everything that you've put together, your whole entire skill set, your whole life experiences, right? Because my experiences are going to be different than somebody else's. Right. And so I may have a different point of view on things and how to treat something or how to fix something or how to perform something, a task, right? So, you know, as long as I leverage all of those things, you can turn that into any business that you want, really.
Right. And so by when you say that, so don't be afraid that the market is saturated. Because you have your own unique experience background there.
Yeah, especially when it comes to like book writing, right? I wrote a book, right? And my first book, I was a little bit afraid, like, are there already some books out there that kind of tell people how to pay off their loans quicker? And I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Mine's specifically for physical therapists and people in the healthcare world. And it's my personal experience on how I did this and how they could do it too. It doesn't have to be the exact way, but they could pick a couple of the ones that I'm doing and implement those. Right. This is just my story. It's to get your ideas flowing and make you think about things. Pick and choose what you want to use from it. Ignore what you don't. Doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, it's whatever's going to work for you, you know? And again, somebody could write the exact same book, but it's going to be completely different because of their point of view and their life experiences. Exactly. So yeah, don't ever be afraid of somebody else doing the same thing you want to do. You know, I don't even look at them as competition. You know, I'm an abundance mindset kind of guy where I think that there's plenty of people out there for everybody to treat or help. So I'm just going to do my thing. And, you know, if people like me and my style and what I'm doing and how I can teach them and help them, they'll come on board, right? If not, they'll go somewhere else. It's, you know, it is what it is. There's plenty of fish in the sea.
Right. Well, this has been a very interesting and very value-packed conversation, Scott. I really learned a lot and really got the ideas flowing. I learned a lot from what you've been saying, your experiences about side gigs and side hustles. For those who are, listening and also are as interested as I am in knowing more, where can they learn more about you, about your courses and stuff, your book as well?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is probably the Facebook group, Professors of Profit. That's where I kind of go over a different side hustle each month, and kind of some of the tips and tricks and tactics that I currently use and employ. And we have to, the community talks about the things that they're doing and they're trying that's working. You can find me on social media at PT Educator, pretty much everywhere. And then the book, like I said, is PT Educator Student Debt Eliminator, Multiple Streams of Revenue for Healthcare Clinicians and Academicians, and that can be found on Amazon. So those are the main ways to reach me. I'm pretty accessible on social media, so by all means, reach out. If you have questions or anything like that, I'd be glad to chat about your ideas and what you're working on.
Right. Thank you very much. Before I let you go, I just want to acknowledge you and for sharing your time with us and your knowledge and experience with the podcast's audience. I just have my last three bites, my last three questions. The first one is, what is your recipe for success?
Like I said, man, persistency. Just persistence and just sticking to it. Look, you're going to get knocked down a bunch in life in general. Just keep getting back up, dust yourself off and get back up, get back on the horse, try it again. Persistence
and sticking to it.
Yep. That's it.
And my second one is, aside from Profit First, because you mentioned that earlier, what other book that you've read that helped you is worth sharing to our listeners?
Yeah, I just finished Ramit Sethi's "I Will Teach You to Be Rich." That's a pretty good one. It kind of basically shows you, simple things like how to use local banks and credit unions instead of the big chain banks because they charge a bunch of fees for nothing. Then he shows you how to take some of those little savings here and there and put them into 401ks and other investment plans. I'm not a huge fan of 401k. I have one, but it's not my plan for retirement. A bunch of my more passive-y type incomes like rental properties and things like that are really going to be the big one. But yeah, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi is a good one. I would say recommend to go out and read that one.
Gotcha. And I'm going to put this on the show notes as well so that people can read it. And my last bite would be, what are the three things, it can be a principle, a motto, a value that you carry every day with you that is essential? So what are the three ingredients that make up F. Scott Feil?
Yeah, I think, the first one probably comes from my dad, and that's just doing the right thing is always the right thing, right? I know Gary Vee says that a lot. Just be a good person, right? The golden rule. Like I in PT school, I was always taught to treat people like they were your family member, or grandma, grandpa, whatever,
exactly.
Right? And that's a good way to go about life in general, right? And then second one would probably be like karma. I'm a big fan of karma. I just believe that if you follow step one and you're a good person, it'll come back around to you in some way, shape, or form. And the more you give, the more you end up getting back. So just kind of go by that rule of karma that things are going to come back around to you. And the more you give out and the more positivity you push out there, you'll receive that back, And then the last but not least is really that, your profession, whatever it may be, PT, OT, doctor, nurse, lawyer, whatever, that should only be the tip of your iceberg, right? We have so many skill sets and things that we learn throughout graduate school or, whatever schooling that we did, or even if it's just the school of hard knocks, right? Like life in general, the streets, right? I grew up in New York. You learn a lot of stuff quick there, going to public school, teach you a couple things, but anything that we learned, any of our life experiences, all of that in general can make up what we can do and how we can help people. So, yeah, I'm a physical therapist or a professor, right? But I'm also a dad, right? I'm also, a son, right? I'm a brother. I like to think that I'm, a pillar in the community. Like I like to help and get engaged. And, my dad was always like the mayor, he never met a stranger. He was always driving around the van. Hey, how are you? Hey, good to see you. All right. Shaking hands and kissing babies, and I like to, think that I'm the same way. I've kind of learned a lot from him. And I just, it's one of those things where like, we don't just have to clock in and clock out and, lurch back to our homes every day, right?
Right.
That we can be so much more than just a physical therapist. And I'm not saying work 80 hours a week and burn yourself out. It's finding that happy medium of like utilizing your skills to the best of your ability and practicing at the top of your license or the top of your degree or the top of your business, whatever it may be. It's going beyond that just that 9 to 5 clock in, clock out mentality.
Right. So doing what is right, karma, and your profession, whatever that is.
Yeah. That's just the tip of our iceberg, man. We got a lot underneath that water there.
I know. I feel like we can discuss a lot more from this, but probably you can come back for another take.
Yeah, sure. Anytime, man. I'd love to.
All right. So as a last statement or a takeaway for our audience, something to take away from this episode, what's that something that you want them to really remember from what we have discussed today?
I think you got to just implement, do a little research, pick a side gig or a side hustle you may be interested in. What's the worst case scenario? You go back to your 9 to 5 job, as a physical therapist, you have a great safety net. Try, experiment, taste things, just figure it out. See if it's something you think you could do or not. If not, pivot and go a different direction, but try things, implement. Just keep trying, keep, experimenting until you finally figure out something that can work for you. Because at the end of the day, we're all striving for, like I said, that time freedom. We want to be able to come and go when we want. We don't want a boss telling us when we can take off for vacation and stuff like that. We want to do whatever we want to do when we want to do it. Well, the only way to get to that point is to have some sort of financial freedom, right? And so again, working a 9 to 5 may or may not get you there. You could have, not had student loans and saved very wisely and retired early. But if you're like most of us and you're in that hamster wheel, that grind, right? That everyday grind, you got to figure a way out of that rat race, And like I said, I think side hustles and side gigs are the way to do that. And maybe they become a full-time gig. Who knows? That'd be great. But at the very least, you got to start somewhere. You got to start generating a little extra income and figure out how to make that bigger and bigger and bigger. And craft your own path.
Right. Start and implement. Thank you again, Scott, for coming in the show.
Absolutely, man. Been a pleasure.